Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Doug.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles, and with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, you suck, Mark.
Well, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
You are not Uncle Mark.
I am not. Can you tell by the sexy voice and
the nearly identical voice?
Body.
You guys sound almost the same all the time.
I'll sound like him when I'm 15, 20 years older. I'm sure of it.
Wow. We're definitely... Uncle Mark was not able to make it for this week's show.
Yeah.
And apparently... we're going to spend the entire time bashing him.
This is my revenge for countless noogies and purple nurples in my life.
Although your nurples are lovely now.
They are. That's why.
Yeah.
You start early.
Yeah, you got to get them. You got to get them young. Otherwise, you're never going to have those good nurples.
They're like fine pieces of Canadian bacon.
Well, here's what we got coming up on the show. We're going to start with.
You're going to tell us about some crazy woo out there.
Yeah, where if you if you need some healing, this is not how to get it. Then Mark, Mark and I, people will be shocked to learn. We sometimes pre-record things.
What?
We don't record everything straight through.
See,
like we present it like we do.
Sometimes looking behind the curtain can be really disappointing.
It is. It's very disappointing. But what isn't disappointing is that we'll have Professor Jim on to tell us about some cognitive thinking, some better ways to think.
And then I'm going to tell us about a family with some particularly dubious values.
Yes, indeed. Those, yeah, exactly. Murder being the weirdest of them.
Among many, but certainly the bloodiest.
It seems like that's not a great family value, but maybe we'll see. We'll get into it.
The family that stabs together.
Goes to jail together?
Exactly.
Something, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that coming up. Let's do a show.
Let's do it. Uncle Dan?
Uh-huh.
There's some strange stuff in this world of ours.
Well, yes.
And I have an itching.
Yeah?
I'd like to know more about stuff that I just don't care about.
Right, well, stuff, here's what we're going to tell you. I'm going to guide you through stuff that will heal your body.
I feel my third eye opening.
Yeah, you should. You should. We're gonna get into some woo.
Love me some woo.
This week on Watch Out for Woo, there are lots of different versions of this, but I found a delightful little faith healer that we're going to talk about. Because this faith healer, there's psychic surgeons, there's all kinds of faith healers out there. There's guys that do big revivals and they'll cure that lady's bad leg and
arthritis,
right? And this guy's headaches and whatever. Oh no, this guy specializes.
Ooh.
Today we're going to talk about Dr. Willard Fuller.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds like a fake name.
It does sound like a fake name. He was born in the 30s, I think. Where's his stuff? Here we go. He was born. In 1915. Sorry, but he went to school in the 30s. He went and eventually graduated. He got some degrees in things like engineering and whatever, but eventually got a theology degree.
Oh, that's all you need.
That's all you need from Southern Baptist Theology Seminary. So now he's a Baptist preacher, and he's going to be going out there and doing the good word. But he is somewhat dissatisfied with just your basic run-of-the-mill Baptistism.
Is it the money?
No. Well, not according to him. This whole, he was like a hellfire and brimstone type of minister all through the 50s. And then in the late 50s, he had an event.
Oh.
He apparently became very ill. And as so many of these accounts put it, Western medicine failed him.
Right.
Anytime anyone uses the word Western in front of the word medicine, woo is nearby.
Turn and run.
There is woo around you.
Take 2 aspirin and put 1 in each ear.
Right. Indeed. So he's got this illness. He decides to go into the forest for a 3-day fast.
Oh, God.
No food, no water, and all meditation.
Because that's what a doctor never says. You're sick. Don't drink any fluids.
Right. But you feed a cold, and you starve the everything. He apparently returned healthy. His illness was miraculously gone, and Jesus started talking to him. And that is not an exaggeration. He literally the Holy Spirit came upon him, and boy, he had some talkings to from the Lord. I'm going to find a quote here. He apparently so he was told that he would be that he would have faith, that he would have healing powers.
Yeah.
And he already had sort of a bit of a ministry at that point. But apparently he went to his congregation and explained to them that he was now a healer. And they formed, the lines formed. And according to at least a couple of things, this is early on in his days. He would lay this. This is a segment from a book called, a book by a guy named Daniel Fry, who is completely believable because apparently, and by the way, this is another thing to watch out for. If anyone says, this guy used to be a NASA scientist, that means that they don't know what they're talking about. Former NASA scientist is the equivalent of woo peddler.
Right.
So anyway, this former NASA scientist in his book wrote the following, quote, Fuller would lay his hands upon them in the name of Jesus, and all kinds of healings took place. Cancers, goiters, warts, ugly birthmarks would disappear. People with arthritis, crippled on crutches would be healed instantly. Stomach ulcers, headaches, sinus, and asthma afflictions would be cured. There were those who were deaf were given hearing, and some with poor eyesight or no sight at all began to see again.
Okay, I must challenge the order of those healings.
Yeah,
because I think you started strong.
Yeah.
Okay, cancer and goiters. Okay, that's
sure,
good. Yes.
Sure, yeah.
Hallelujah. Warts.
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels like we buried the lead on that one.
I feel like we didn't get till the blind and the deaf until the very end.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem like cancer. You save cancer to the end.
Yeah. Start with the warts.
Start with the warts.
The birthmark. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Learn to build, guys. Jesus. Well, here's the thing. You want to talk about anticlimax? Let's talk about what he finally focused on, because apparently he had the ability to do all of these things.
Yeah.
But what he eventually decided he really was good at.
Vertigo.
Teeth. This guy was a tooth healer. And very much so.
What a strange place to end up.
It's so weird. And here's the thing. Did he heal the teeth to make them whole? No. Magically, fillings would appear in people's mouths. God. Silver fillings would turn to gold. Fillings that didn't exist before began to exist. Crowns would just magically appear.
So the teeth themselves would not become young teeth.
No. Although every now and then there were reports of like old people who had like no teeth in their mouths would suddenly grow a whole new set of teeth.
Oh, Jesus.
That did get reported. But yeah, literally we're talking about fillings showing up in,
Your braces are gold now.
Right. It's just
Your
kooky.
headgear is beautiful now.
Lots of firsthand accounts that I read online, so they have to be true, of people talking about broken, infected teeth, which, by the way, other spiritual healers are too scared to attack.
Couldn't bother with.
Because bones, man, Sure, you can get rid of that soft tissue trouble. That's easy.
Right.
Anybody can do it.
Right.
But boy, when you need the Lord's own drill, that takes some extra prayer power. And Dr. Fuller was up for the task. He eventually gave up the fire and brimstone thing. He gave up at the same. So this was about the same time that he started this whole healing thing. He let go of all of the sort of the denominational Christianity. He held on to this very vague sense of Christianity and Jesus and stuff, and he would pray and he would conduct these miracles in the name of Jesus, I guess. But it wasn't like it was no longer he didn't believe in any of the preacherly arts. He was just about fixing teeth through Jesus. And yeah, lots of I saw a video online where he's shining a flashlight and he's got one of those mirrors on a stick, and he's like putting it in, and people are testifying that they're seeing the silver turn to gold right in front of them, and he's just showing. Of course, it turns out people aren't really that aware of what's in their own teeth.
Sure,
like so many people. If I ask you, how many fillings do you have? Do you know the answer to that? Do you have any sense of that at all?
I'm terrified that there's something stuck in my teeth right now in the context of this conversation.
And there have been people who have been serviced by him, and the miraculous gold fillings later. They'd take them to an actual dentist, and it would turn out to be like tobacco stains or something like that. But in the meantime. Woo! Magic!
And he's not. So your teeth are not being healed. You're just getting the fillings you would have gotten had you gone to the dentist.
Right, yeah.
And now the dentist can't feed his family.
Yeah, it's fucking not a healing. If your arm's broken and someone prays for you to get a cast.
Wake up with a cast.
Shut up. Oh, you're not doing it.
Exactly.
Just fucking heal the damn thing.
But it's a golden cast.
Ooh. And the cast turned from plaster to porcelain. Hooray! Oh my goodness. It's delightful. And the guy, he passed away in 2009.
Did he die from his teeth?
He died of tooth-related injuries. No, I don't know what he died of. But by that point, he had started a foundation. Thousands upon thousands of people would go to this guy and for their dental healings. And he was absolutely, and many of them were 1,000% convinced that he had healed them. So, I don't have proof that he didn't. I can say that. But he does seem unlikely to have been true.
To say the least.
To say the least. Yeah, poor guy. So there you go. If you guys out there, it's too bad he's dead. We can't recommend him to anybody now.
No.
But
this is nicknamed Dr. Tooth.
It should have been.
That was one of the Muppets in the band.
It was.
Yeah.
It was in the band Electric Mayhem.
That's right.
You're not going to get me on these. I'm all over the Muppet
I wasn't
stuff.
trying to get you.
Golden teeth and golden tones. Welcome to my presence.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm in the presence of greatness.
Right. I just went full Henson on you.
You did.
Anyway.
And Dr. Tooth had a golden tooth.
He did.
Which was silver before he went to see
Willard
Mr.
Fuller. So there you go. Next time someone needs some help, send them to. And by the way, this guy, if you look up pictures of him, I'm going to show you. He looked
no!
like sort of like
that's not what I expected at all.
Yeah. By the time he was kind of in his older years, he looked like Willie Nelson had a baby with Santa Claus.
Yeah, he looks like Richard Branson didn't have any money.
But a full set of nice teeth in that
nice
mouth.
Teeth.
Probably fake. Anyway, there you go. Watch out for Woo, kids. It's out there. It'll get you.
Moving on.
Hey, Uncle Mark.
Uh-huh.
I think that you're bad, and you think that I'm bad.
You know what? You don't have to be a total Nazi about this.
Damn it! You went first. I was going to dive in with that. Oh, I thought
there's laws about these things,
there are laws. Yeah,
or there ought to be a law.
there ought. Maybe that's what we should call this segment. There ought to be a law.
There ought to be a law, and we'll just yell at the kids with their hippity hop pants around their butts.
Get off of our lawn.
Or we'll just goose step them off the lawn. So to talk about the law that there ought to be, we've brought in our friend, resident expert on smart stuff, Professor Jim.
Gentlemen,
Hey, how's it going, Jim?
doing well.
Good. Jim, our resident philosophy professor, we bring you in to help us stay away from some of the more egregious logical fallacies of the world.
On the cognitive straight and narrow.
There you go.
Yes.
I like it. So what are we going to be cognating today?
Well, you guys already started it just wonderfully. This might come as a bit of a shock, but according to my sources, these are my online sources, we are surrounded by Nazis. It's not just the two of you, actually. They're everywhere.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So I just, for instance, there is a state representative in Kansas who has gone on record saying that Planned Parenthood are Nazis.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's an easy one. There is a councilwoman in New Jersey who's made it very clear that Democrats are Nazis.
Oh, all of them.
All of them.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Fair enough.
This was, on Facebook.
Yeah.
You might remember the former presidential candidate Howard Dean.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the one. He's now made it very clear Trump supporters are Nazis.
Okay. Good. Excellent.
And I've also heard from one other source, Republicans are Nazis.
Okay. So is there anyone we haven't covered in these United States?
No, I
of
think
America?
it's basically we're all Nazis.
Okay.
And that's the problem, right? This is
Right.
This is the world that we live in that generates something that's been called Godwin's law.
Oh.
And so this was an observation that a guy named Mike Godwin made in 1990. And the law is this: the longer a discussion proceeds, particularly in the domain of online discussions, the chances that someone will invoke Nazis or Hitler goes to 1, goes to certainty.
Okay.
So it's essentially, as time goes on, it's inevitable someone is going to invoke Hitler or the Nazis.
Right.
And you can play games with this, right? Some people have said that the first person in the argument to invoke Hitler or the Nazis loses.
Yeah, I've heard it said
Phrased
that
that
way.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That basically you have to give up your side of the argument
You've hit bottom.
if that's where you go.
Yeah. Because I think the gist of it is, right, the whole idea of you lose when you do that is, once you're saying that, typically what you're embodying there is just this idea of Nazis have come to represent pure evil, and all you've got left is you're pure evil.
Right.
Right.
And it's such a weird dodge too. It's because it's this way of like not making your argument.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, for instance, Jim, I know that you're a fellow that doesn't eat meat in general. You know who else didn't eat meat? Adolf Hitler. So
So I got that going for me.
you're obviously evil.
Yeah.
Obviously you hate Jews.
Yeah.
Is what that is.
Well, and what you're picking up on, Dan, I think is something important. That is, one of the things that it's important to remember, before Nazis were Nazis, they were just regular people, with hopes and dreams and ambitions and loves and hates like everybody else. It only ended at the Holocaust at the end.
Right.
And along the way, they were just normal people. And so as a result, it's very easy to, you can basically find anything represented among the population of, Nazi Germany and its affiliates and say you're a Nazi.
Right.
And there's a lot of harm to that. I mean, I think one of the things, there's something, that we were talking earlier just about you're sort of giving up on the argument when all you can say is, you're a Nazi. But it does a real, it's disrespectful to people who, were actually victims of what happened at that time.
Oh, thank God you didn't say it's disrespectful to Nazis.
No,
That would have been bad.
Nazis, I think, are the only people anymore that do not get called Nazis.
Well, isn't that I mean, there was just a rally in
Georgia.
In Georgia,
Yes.
where a swastika was
Being
lit
burnt.
up and
That's right.
all sorts of stuff, and so there are in the world Nazis.
That's right. And I think, what's important about this, and it's what in some sense makes this difficult, you don't want to say, on the one hand, you want to say, don't just invoke Nazis every time you disagree with someone.
Right.
On the other
Right.
hand, you don't want to say it's never okay to invoke Nazis, right? Because
Right.
it, to the extent that you want to draw on history and awful things that have happened in the past to inform how we go about what we're doing in the present, that's a helpful case study to keep in mind. And so the challenge is, how do you do that in a way, right, that is responsible and respectful, without it turning into just a kind of rhetorical, knee-jerk reaction.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the part of the problem with using Nazism or using Hitler in just whatever any old argument that you want. You won't let me have this shopping cart. You're a shopping cart Nazi
Yeah,
or whatever.
right.
Is that when it comes time when we actually do need to invoke Nazism, when we need to say no, these are the tactics and of Nazi Germany.
Yeah. The word is devoid of any actual substance.
And people are calling Godwin's law on you when you're like,
Right.
No, this is very important stuff we need to be talking about right now.
Right. So I do.
Right.
If there's sort of one lesson here, it is, I think there are certain cases where it can be very useful to draw on history, whether it's the Holocaust or genocides or slavery. It can be useful to draw on the history of human atrocities, but it takes a lot of care and time to flesh that out in a useful way. Because what you need to do, right, is sort of describe the process that generates the awful conclusion, and then look to present events and say, look, I see a similar process playing here, right? That takes space. You're not going to pull that off in 140 characters. You're not going to reasonably pull it off in a Facebook post. And so,
Point of order. It's 280 characters now.
Oh, well,
so
so
I think
maybe
there is an
you
opportunity for clarification in there.
you're going to have to use a lot of emojis in there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Where is the swastika emoji? I've looked for it. I can't find it.
So my advice is, if you're ever online, mind Godwin's law, because it's unlikely that you're gonna be able to deploy that point in both a respectful way and in a reasonable, convincing way. If you're interested in writing an op-ed or talking with someone about history and how past history bears on the present, that could play out over a conversation, but it takes time and it takes space and it takes a level head.
Well, it is kind of an unfortunate, I guess, shitty reality, because the 20th century, mid 20th century totalitarianism and the struggle against it are kind of the defining issues of the 20th century, right? And
Sure.
It's still everything that rippled out from there still affects our politics and our society and our culture and everything. So to have to tie that hand behind your back, when you're coming at it from an honest direction of the historical meanings, or what were the cause and effect of those politics, its cultural movements, is kind of horrible, because someone can then just say, well, Godwin's law, you mentioned
You can't go there.
the Night of the Long Knives in a historical context, therefore Godwin's law, you lose. Right?
Yeah.
So why are you even telling us about this, Jim?
Well, I don't want your listeners to fall prey to, being the ones who go there. It's the kind of thing that happens all too often. I think it happens most of the time online in social, media sites, and it's much. You're going to get a lot more traction if you sort of try to talk about the substance of the issue that you are disagreeing about, rather than trying to characterize the person that you disagree with as a Nazi.
Well, and I think that that's and you can turn that the other way too. You can, if someone else calls your argument Nazism or calls you a Nazi or whatever, it can be wise to ask them to return to the substance of the thing.
Right. What is it that you disagree with?
Right. Oh, how am I a Nazi?
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
Mm-hmm.
No. So I think Jim, if I'm interpreting this correctly, I think what you're telling people is avoid the Hitler thing and just use Pol Pot instead. Is that right?
You're on much safer ground, with
That's
other
just,
mass
that's
killings.
just manners.
Or go to Huns. To call somebody a Hun. It's a perfect.
Oh, old school.
Yeah,
Old
sure.
school. That's nice. The best racism is old-timey racism.
You're so Han Dynasty with that.
All right. Well, I think we've exhausted this.
All right.
Let's move on.
Thanks, Jim.
Toodles.
Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
One of the, you and I were just talking about the fact that you personally are a patron of several shows
That's true.
that you enjoy out there in the world.
I pay for my content.
I appreciate that. I think that that's a very sweet thing to do, and we have some people who also believe in that concept that we need to give some thanks to
Right.
here on this show. People who they get access to some things. They get access to an early version of the show.
Right.
They're hearing this way before everybody else is. And by way, I mean
Sometimes months.
multiple days before the unwashed masses get this show. And there is going to be bonus content. I keep promising that. I really need to follow through on that. I'm really awful. There will be some. It's already been recorded. I just haven't edited it.
Cooking with Dan and Mark.
That's right. And Doug. Doug ruins it all. So here's some people that I have to thank. Thank you so much to Katie, to Dan, Karen, Einar, and Suzanne this week. These people have now become part of the legion of the best humans on the planet.
Agreed.
And if you, dear listener, dear nieces and nephews, if you want to be a part of that, if you want to also help us out, try and keep this thing going, you can go to howtoheretic.com and click on the Patreon button, and that'll get you there. And then you choose how much you want to give every week, and it ends up being incredibly wonderful for us.
That's
so
right.
Thank you all so much, and let's move on.
Moving on.
Well, Uncle Doug, I need you to teach me things.
I am here for that purpose.
You have studied. You have read.
Yeah.
Okay. You've Googled some shit.
Exactly right.
And
I found this thing called Wikipedia.
Oh.
And it's amazing.
Ain't that a treat?
Yeah. And I wanted to make a good impression because, Uncle Mark's not here and hopefully he never will be again.
Who needs him? I don't need him. I mean, at very least, we don't have to record over the distance.
Yeah, and we don't have
distance.
to edit out all the bathroom breaks and denture soakings. It's good.
Oh, that man is not here to defend himself.
He's not, because we're on the second floor. He'd never make it. Oh, he's so old.
Boom, baby, boom. Well, technically, you're now the old one on the show. Then
That's
Uh-oh.
damn.
Uh-oh. All right, what are you going to tell us about?
Well, I thought I'd take us to a different time and place to meet the Manson family.
Oh.
The lovely and happy Manson family.
And we're not talking Maryland.
We're not talking the sitcom by the same name either.
Was there a Manson family? What?
I don't know if there
There
was.
should be.
What was the family one? The Addams family.
The Manson family.
Actually, not far away. Pretty close.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take us back to 1934 to the birth of one Charles Manson, who was born originally Charles Millis, Milles. I don't know if it's Millis or Miles.
Oh.
Charles Millis Maddox.
Maddox?
And
he wasn't a Manson?
He wasn't a Manson. His mother's maiden name was Manson, which he eventually took on, but he was born officially on the documentation as Maddox.
Okay.
And this guy was born in 1934 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, the first section of this man's life is it really is a life in 3 acts.
Okay.
One is a litany of crimes. of a kind of minor degree.
Okay.
The second is a litany of crimes of an excessive degree.
Sure.
And then a long prison sentence.
Right.
So it's not a happy story in any of the parts. But he was born to a 16-year-old unmarried mother. He probably never met his actual father. His stepfather called himself Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr.
Oh, wow.
The colonel was simultaneously a con man and not a colonel.
Was he could have been a colonel in that sort of southern sense of colonel, where
Perhaps.
where people like chicken purveyors,
Like your Colonel Sanders's.
decide to just assign themselves a rank.
Or Major Garrett on Fox News. He's not a major. I found that out. So his father found out his 16-year-old girlfriend was pregnant and vanished. He was called up for service, so to speak. His mother was a 24-karat alcoholic. In 1939, after a prolonged drinking binge, Manson's uncle, his mother's brother, and his girlfriend attempted to rob a friend of theirs they thought was wealthy, and were incompetent, got caught. She was given house arrest because of the child. His aunt and his uncle and girlfriend went away for the rest of his life. I never really saw them again. So this was kind of the pattern that would mark the early life of Charles Manson, was an astounding amount of petty crimes.
Sure.
I mean, I couldn't, if I wrote the list, it would be more than 3 or 4 pages long.
Wow.
Of just petty crimes, theft.
I do. If nothing else, let the lesson of this story be, listeners, find out beforehand if your friend is wealthy, if you're going to rob them.
That is the moral of the story. We could end the segment right now.
At very least, be sure about their wealth. Don't just go in there thinking maybe they got some money.
Right. Bite the gold coin. That's how you know. Manson was sent to a Catholic school for troubled youth. He escaped. He began committing petty crimes. He robbed stores at night to pay for an apartment. He was caught and sent to a facility called Boys Town, where he and another boy broke out, stole a car and a gun, went on a spree. He was caught again and sentenced to a more serious youth facility. All of this before he was 13 years old.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
That's boy, that is a 1970s coming of age movie right there.
What's the merit badge for crime spree?
Right.
He bounced around a bunch of youth prisons, and in that time he developed what he called the insanity game, where he would flail his arms wildly and screech and groan when he was outmatched physically by older, more dangerous boys.
Okay.
So it was kind of his way of, avoiding a fight, confusing his enemy.
Right.
And he would come to use that later in life.
Well, yeah, it seems like he became like expert level at the insanity game.
Exactly. So when I was a very young boy, I used a similar game to escape my older brother's privations. I called it going limp.
Okay.
And I would just give up, fall limply upon the floor, and they would just tire of punching me for a while.
Little baby dog.
That's right.
I'm so sorry.
It worked like a charm.
Yeah.
And one of those older brothers used to host this show.
Before he was kicked off for being a dick.
The day before the statute of limitations ran out. As you might expect, things got worse. In 1952, Manson was caught raping another inmate with a knife.
Oh, my God.
Not with a knife, but at knife point.
At knife point,
There's a
right.
distinction.
He held the person, he compelled them with a knife.
Compelled them with a knife. He also committed various other offenses in prison, which at the time included homosexuality and other violent offenses. He did eventually get out of prison and got married, but unsurprisingly found his way back to prison, leaving his pregnant wife alone. When she took up with another man, he became enraged and tried to escape from prison 2 weeks before he was supposed to be released.
Oh, my God.
And so he was sentenced to another 5 years. In 1958, he got out of prison and immediately fell back into theft, pimping underage girls, and passing bad checks. He remarried another young girl who, along with another girl, he was pimping across state lines and in Mexico, which is a federal crime.
Yeah, well.
Leading to his arrest and a 10-year sentence.
I like that you talk about, well, that one was a federal crime, as though he's, seems to care about the law
exactly.
in any way.
Well, the only distinction is, and you read this litany of his crimes, you're like, how the hell did this guy keep getting out or not getting incarcerated? The laws were a little, I don't know if we need to call them lax or kinder at the time, but the distinction was the federal crimes carried much higher sentences. So all of his prison time was mostly on the back of his federal crimes.
Okay.
So he in prison after his 10-year sentence for pimping, he learned to play the steel guitar, which would come in very handy in his in his later life. And he also dabbled in Scientology.
Oh, wow.
What could go wrong?
No, nothing.
By the time his sentence was up in 1967, he had spent half of his life in prison, and he actually asked if he could stay. At this point, he's like, you know what? I'm going to be back here anyway.
Right.
You might as well just save the.
We don't need to go
fees.
through all of the nonsense. Let's just, you guys feed me 3 squares a day, and we'll call it good.
Exactly. Ironically, he was denied that motion and was kicked out of prison. At that point, he moved to Berkeley and began playing the steel guitar on the street and begging for money, and that's kind of how he started to fund his lifestyle. I wouldn't say he was a reformed person, but he found a different avenue for his for income.
Yeah, sure.
He met a young woman named Mary Bruner and moved in with her, and before long, he had 18 women living with him in that apartment. Now,
damn, that is an effective fella.
there is a mystery to this story that no one has been able to fully understand up until now, is his ability to ensnarl young women.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for the fact that he was doing this in literally the summer of love in 1967.
Sure.
In the Haight-Ashbury district, which would be ground zero for ensnarling young women.
Right.
In probably all time. But he had a way of, men and women, but particularly women, of bringing them under his spell that psychologists and writers have puzzled over ever since.
And pickup artists the world over.
Pickup art, exactly. Mind Freak has done many deep dives into this. What's that guy's name? Is he a pickup artist? Chris Angel.
Oh, really?
Is he a pickup artist?
I don't know.
He should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, he can pick himself up off the ground.
His group grew, indulged in the hippie lifestyle. They took road trips around the West. They had a lot of sexy time, and they did a lot of drugs.
Yes.
Manson had another baby, thought to be his third by as many women at that time. It is unknown, actually, how many sons or daughters he had.
Some.
More than a few.
He had some.
He had some. It was at this time that, by a very weird circumstance, they fell in with Dennis Wilson of Beach Boys fame.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they basically, he met a couple of Manson's girls, and Manson kind of used them to shoehorn himself into this guy's life.
I mean, here's the thing. You said his name was Dennis Wilson?
Yeah.
When your brother Brian is a little loopy,
Right.
you seek refuge in the sanity that is
Charles Manson. Clearly, it's like, oh my God, a sane person, finally.
Finally.
So the Manson family kind of entered Dennis Wilson's life. They didn't take over his house, but they might as well have.
Sure.
They burned his car at one point accidentally. Friends like these.
Yeah. Then again, you bring enough women into it, it could be a good trade-off. You
And
never know.
he used these young women as currency, essentially,
Yeah.
a lot. And by all accounts, including their own, it was not coercive.
Right.
And because many of them spoke on the record subsequent to what happened next.
Sure.
They moved into a couple ranches in California. The family did. This is what the cult began to call itself.
The family.
And they at times would pay for rent in these ranches with sex.
Sure.
The young girls giving themselves up for rent.
Yeah.
Also at this time, and this is my favorite part of the story, if there could be a favorite part, is when they first heard the Beatles' White Album.
Sure.
Which I'm going to play right now in its entirety.
Nope, you're not.
No?
We cannot afford that.
Not just the first half?
Nope. You're gonna.
It's really going to cramp my style in the rest of the story.
You can sing all of it.
Okay.
Just start with the instrumentals. Me.
Manson believed the Beatles were trying to communicate with him through this album. And again, these guys were doing a lot of LSD.
Right, sure. I mean, technically, the Beatles were trying to communicate with all of their listeners with that album.
Technically
so he's
true.
not wrong.
He's not wrong. I
He's
agree.
just taking it more personally than maybe he ought.
And I don't know if the message that he took from that communication was what
Right.
the Beatles had intended.
Sure.
But what he thought the Beatles were trying to tell him about was the upcoming end of days, which would be kicked off by a race war. which he called Helter Skelter after the Beatles song, which I will now play for you in its entirety.
We will not be listening to any.
This is really hard.
Nieces and nephews, you can go and find these on your audio devices of choice and listen in your own time.
Okay. I mean, you're really missing out on this part of the story, but that's okay. They even believe the song Blackbird was a direct communication to Charles Manson that now is the time to try and spark the race war. I will now play the song Blackbird in its entirety.
Okay, I'll allow it. This time I'll allow it.
Which, if you have heard that song, it is one of the most sweet, calm.
It couldn't possibly be interpreted as "let's start a race war."
Exactly.
It's just a very nice, pleasant song.
It's and so anyway, there's a couple lines in that about take these broken wings and learn to fly. That he's like, So again, a lot of LSD.
Yeah. Well, and also clearly, as we'll continue to learn, he's got a real mind for this stuff. It's not just the LSD. I think there had to be something just really good personally happening inside of him.
This background brought him to this point.
Yeah.
I agree. So Manson committed the first known murder in 1969 when he shot a black drug dealer he owed money to named Bernard Crowe. Now, this murder was a murder of necessity. Again, it wasn't part of any larger narrative that we're aware of. This was a guy he owed money to. His only salute, he tried to parlay sex, didn't work, so he killed him. He then he and several of his family members went and held a guy named Gary Hinman hostage for several days, trying to get him to hand over his stocks and bonds before Manson ordered him stabbed. And
wow,
yeah, and
stocks and bonds. Honestly, that's a weird request. Like when you're robbing a guy. I have him liquidate. Don't have him sign over the bonds themselves.
Look, I have tried more than once to sell some bonds at a pawn shop, and it didn't go well. The pennies on the dollar is all I got.
Frankly, what you know what? More thieves. Maybe we're looking at this wrong. More thieves need to go into investment theft.
Exactly. Oh. So they stabbed this guy, and then this is kind of where they began trying to spark the race war. They used his blood to paint "Political Piggy" in blood on the wall, and they also drew a panther paw.
Okay.
And that was they were trying to. They actually did. They had complicated views on race. They weren't really avowedly racist, but they believed at the end of days would be sparked by a race war. It's like the Christians and the Jews in Israel right now.
Yeah.
We'll make sure you have Israel. I'm not going to tell you what the next part is,
right.
But it's really important to me that happens.
Right. We support you Jews right up until another thing happens.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. No big deal.
Okay, so the next piece is really where the rubber meets the road. Again, it is unknown how Manson got his followers to follow him so down the fucking rabbit hole like they did. His belief system was this amalgam of Christian millennialism. He claimed to be an incarnation of Jesus Christ. He claimed that his followers were incarnations of the first Christians. He believed that Satan and Jesus would reconcile in the last days and judge the world together.
Oh, cute.
And then he also had some Scientology sprinkled in there for good measure.
Right. Because honestly, what could go better than some Xenu?
Right. And did I mention the LSD? So on the night of August 8th, 1969, Manson directed one of his followers named Watson to take Sarah Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel to the home of a person named Melcher and kill everyone there.
What was the last name you said?
Melcher.
No, Patricia. What? Krenwinkel.
Krenwinkel.
I was going to... Okay. Well, I was just about to say that I think you're making her up, but eventually we're going to get to someone named Squeaky Frome, I'm guessing.
We are, actually.
Never mind. All the names are stupid now.
Jeez. So the family members proceeded to kill the 5 people they found there. Actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, who was living there at the time.
Holy shit.
Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and this one's always been really hard for me, Wojciech Frykowski, and Stephen Parent, who was visiting. They wrote "pig" in blood on the front as they left. These were shockingly brutal murders. They would actually be shockingly brutal murders today. Each victim was stabbed multiple times. Sharon Tate was stabbed in the belly multiple times. Some of the victims didn't die instantly and pulled themselves across the floor in their own blood, and it was tremendously gruesome. And it does kind of ring a lot of fears of people of home invasion, and that no one knew what was happening. Nobody knew what was motivating this. So it was a national sensation,
probably including Manson himself. Like, he doesn't know what's motivating this,
exactly. And this idea, it is disputed that the motivation behind that was actually was solely to cause a race war. But what the full spectrum of motivations remain, and probably always will remain, a mystery.
So were they trying to pin these murders on
black people?
On how did they? What effort did they make to make it be pinned on the people of color?
So the painting of the words, in the blood of the words pig, piggy, and the leopard's paw, the panther paw, like Black Panthers. They were trying to push the police to think this was black people, Black Panthers who committed it, thereby getting the police to overreact, getting the Black Panthers to overreact.
Was pig sort of jive talk back then?
Yeah.
It wasn't. That wasn't a white person phrase at the time?
No, and it actually goes back to another Beatles song, which Manson interpreted to be talking about black people.
Okay.
So again, the police would have to have listened to the White Album several times to be like,
you got some one hippie on the police force who's like, wait a minute,
I get it. So the next night they went to the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, and Manson this time went. He didn't go to Tate's house and participate in those murders, but he did go to the LaBianca's house the next night, and they tortured this couple severely. I won't go into the details, but then they wrote "War and Blood" on Leno's abdomen. Manson demanded that many of the members of the family participate in the murder, even though the people were already dead. So the knives were passed around, and members of the family were ordered to stab the victims to get their hands dirty, so to speak. Several of the victims, of the two victims, they were stabbed dozens of times.
It's too squeaky.
Mm-hmm. So the case was obviously, like I said, a national sensation. I won't go down the particulars of how they were caught. Let's just say these weren't master criminals. Lots and lots and lots of physical evidence was left at the scene.
Right.
Eventually, they were caught. They found Manson at the Spawn Ranch, which is one of the ones he was paying for with sex. They found Manson hiding in a cabinet. Now, here's where things get weird.
Oh, good. Now is when it gets weird. I get it. Okay.
The trial phase of this was on international news, on TV every night. Manson made an insane spectacle of the trial. He demanded to be his own attorney and then tried to get his attorney fired, thinking that was one way he could get out of the case, which is a novel legal theory.
Yes, it is.
He showed up one day with an X carved in his head, which over time he turned into a swastika.
I do. Yeah, I remember that.
A group of his female followers, the ones who had not been arrested for participating in the murders, began showing up at the trial every day, mimicking anything he did. They shaved their heads. They carved X's into their heads too. At one point, Manson shaved his head. They shaved their heads. These followers tried to dissuade witnesses with tactics like intimidation, burning cars, spiking people's food with LSD.
I would be relatively intimidated by that crew.
These were scary people. Manson tried to cause a mistrial several times by flashing newspapers at the jury. With headlines on them that he thought might taint the jury. Yeah, totally.
Just holding up the paper because they're not supposed to read it.
Exactly. So Richard Nixon made some comment like, "This guy is clearly guilty."
Right.
The jury was sequestered, so they didn't. So Manson yanked that newspaper up and showed it to the jury.
Look.
Yeah, totally. and it's again, these are not the dumbest. These are not Giuliani level legal strategies. These actually might work.
Yeah.
At one point, Manson rushed the judge. And it caused the judge to wear a pistol under his robe for the rest of the trial.
Oh, wouldn't that have just saved everybody so much trouble if he had just rushed the judge and the judge had just shot him?
Shot him on the spot. It's hard to imagine a trial like this taking place now. You know what I mean? Like that level of craziness would be allowed.
Well, I mean, it probably wouldn't. The second somebody started acting remotely that crazy, then
they're out, right?
You're watching the rest of this from a remote location.
Exactly. I think because this was one of the first times anything like this had ever happened, there
Right.
really wasn't much to go on.
Yeah.
Long story short, Manson was eventually found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The 4 people who went to the house that night and committed the murders were sentenced to multiple death sentences. So that would
So
be
wait, they were sentenced to death, but not him?
correct.
That's weird.
He didn't actually commit any of the murders that he could be prosecuted for.
Oh, okay.
He ordered them. He was there when a couple of them happened, but he didn't do it.
He wasn't the stabby guy.
He wasn't the stabby guy,
Okay.
which in a lot of ways makes him even scarier,
yeah.
right? And then, like you mentioned, on September 5th, 1975, one of the family members named Squeaky Frome tried to assassinate Gerald Ford.
Yeah. Ain't that fun?
Ain't that fun?
Good Lord.
Yeah. So the end of the story is Manson. I don't think it's the end of the story, but it's the end of this story. Manson died on November 19th, 2017.
Yeah.
So
just
days
last
ago.
year.
Yep. You look at a case like this and be like, okay, if Joseph Smith had maybe had more petty crime in his early life, things could have turned out quite differently.
If he had been put into the system that Manson had been put into, if
Right.
he had to go to here's the thing. When you find someone, a child, behaving in ways that show signs of
psychopathy.
intense degenerate behavior or whatever, the best thing to do is put them in a school where they will be surrounded by others of the same ilk.
Exactly.
Because it will for sure not backfire ever at all.
Right.
That goes well every time.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure there just wasn't the mental health resources back then.
Right.
Not like there are now for prisoners. Which
Right.
right.
Good Lord. Well, and not only that, but I mean, it works in basically the same way that sending a gay boy on a mission with a bunch of
boy.
other men, young men, works,
Right.
which is not at all and probably makes everything worse.
Let's make sure to do nothing to address the lion in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but he worked out something special.
Well, there's your Charles Manson family.
Well, and if you and the trick of it is that it's when the religion elements get involved that it becomes really scary. Because
Right.
before that, it's just like, petty crimes and sexy times.
Right. And so what would if it was just LSD and steel guitar and underage sex, would the story have ended the same way?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But once you start to establish beliefs
Right.
about the universe, and you mix in a healthy dose of mental illness and psychotropic drugs, you're going to get a fun cocktail going there.
That almost never ends well.
Nope. And by almost, just eliminate the word almost.
I would just say yet.
so far.
Far.
There will come a time. Jesus is coming back at some point.
Well, of course he is.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Uncle Doug. That
Moving
was
on.
depressing.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you guys. Please feel free to send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO. That's 903-884-9686. Also Twitter.
Yeah. Mark's on the Twitter. You can tattle on how mean Doug was.
Hashtag no more Mark.
That's at howtoheretic, I think.
Right.
Thanks to all of our patrons again, one more time.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing this show.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Hashtag no more Mark. Bye, friends.
Bye.